Stephen, how about you? What's been your experience? How has your communication and engagement strategy evolved since the start of the pandemic?
I don't think the experience north of the border and certainly in Guelph has altered that much than what Dylan explained. We knew pretty early on. So it's funny you mentioned March 13th. It was a Friday. I remember that. And City Hall in Guelph closed on the 16th. So, and I think I want to say on the 14th, the WHO declared a global pandemic or something around that time. So things changed very quickly, and we realized that we had to pivot and be pretty agile. And I think, that's the one thing that's been really critical as a skill set is sort of that I'll use the term almost like sort of a digital skill set to be able to be agile and pivot and move quickly. Agility has been so important for us in how we deal with situations, and that comes from sort of the traditional term of agile and when you think about project management, but it also just sort of more in the generic term of the ability for departments and city staff to pivot and move in a way that the citizens and the community demanded. I can give you an example. We had a pretty big project. I mean, my work revolves around, as you mentioned, Matt, in my intro, about around legislative services. So one of the big projects that we'd come across is there was a need and a time for city council in Guelph to look at their structure. We've got 12 members of council in 6 wards, or another term what we call districts, and they've been in place in that way for 3 decades now. And like any good organization, there's always a need and an emphasis to sort of take a step back, look, decide, and figure out whether our governance model is meeting the needs of the community. And so we had planned at the tail end of 2019 and leading into the early part of 2020, sort of December, January, February, to have a really significant, robust community conversation about that governance model. How many councillors do you want per ward? Is 12 enough? Do we need more? Do we need less? How is this governance structure suiting the needs of the community? We had planned 7 town hall sessions, in each of the wards or each of the districts, and one sort of broader city town hall, and open houses and that kind of thing to sort of engage with the community in what a year ago we would have thought was a very traditional way to engage with the community. And then the world got tips upside down on March 13th of 2020. And so we had to move pretty quickly. We went completely digital online. We still managed to have an open virtual town hall. We had panelists that were on the call. We allowed for residents to call in and ask questions in that regard. We recorded it, much like this panel discussion is being recorded. We posted it online. We leveraged the tools of social media and various platforms, and we use sort of what we have an online engagement tool that we use that also was really robust, allowed for surveying, allowed for questions to be asked, and we tried to narrow the gap between the experience of what an in-person engagement would feel like on this project to what now a digital engagement project would feel like. And in an in-person situation, any one of us could walk up to me and say, I have a question about this. You could do it at a coffee break. You could do it near the end of the ceremony or at the end of the event. You could put your hand up in the middle and ask the question. And so we're trying to find a way to do that. And it sounds almost simplistic or overly intuitive, but we had to deliberately think about how we could match that, because you can't have that when you fill out a survey online, and you can have it somewhat when there's a panel. But what we did is we found, well, we'll hold virtual office hours where we had set times, morning, afternoon, evening, on the weekends, where people could pick up a phone and dial in to us. And we staffed it. We had made sure that we had experts that were on the call and be able to answer phone calls. But that allowed us to really bridge the gap and bring close the idea of an in-person virtual versus a virtual engagement session. So, yeah, to answer the question simply, our strategy evolved since the beginning of the pandemic by really forcing us to be digital and think digital and be agile in that, and in a way that we still think really supports the community. And what we found is it worked very well. We had 3 weeks. We had over 600 surveys completed online. We had great organic reach through social media, not boosted or paid content, but organic reach through various social media platforms. And so we've seen it's been pretty successful. And I think Dylan makes a great point. People are busy taking their kids to soccer practice or swimming lessons. They're caring for maybe elderly parents. Life is busy. It demands a lot of us. And that hasn't changed necessarily through the pandemic. That existed before. And so in a way, these digital means of reaching out to people has maybe in a way made it more accessible to those that want to input on city decision making and local government processes. So I think it's been really successful.
Are your elected bodies still meeting remotely, or did you go to a remote version?
Yeah. Yeah, so the way that sort of it structures in Ontario, in Canada, is that the provincial level, akin to the state level government, sets the rules for municipalities. We're in the term we use often is we're creatures of the province. Our framework for operating and our rules of engagement, so to speak, as municipalities is set by the province. They enacted changes to the legislation, the Municipal Act in Ontario, that allowed for municipalities to have virtual online meetings for the elected bodies. So we moved pretty quickly. I would say, I think um, we were one of the first. I'm going to say at least one of the first two or three in Ontario that went remote and virtual, and we've been that way ever since. The mayor as head of council is in the building. Our counterpart to Dylan is in the building as CAO, and myself as the city clerk, sort of the overseer of the legislative process and procedures, is in the building. Other than that, we can have everyone else remote, all of council, all of staff, and we've supported that. They're live.